Thank you for joining us for this presentation and release of the report that we've been working closely with the New American Economy and the American Immigration Council on regarding immigrants and their impact in the greater Council Bluffs, Omaha MSA, as well as in Southwest Iowa. This is a great group of folks at the New American Economy now, the American Immigration Council as of January 1, I believe, when they did a merger. But I've worked with them in the past and they really do a good job showing some supporting data that can speak to the positive impact that immigrants are having in our local MSA as well as just in our region. The reason that this is so important is the fact that not only does it impact our workforce, which is our #1 priority issue here at the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce, but it also advises us as we look at our policy apparatus and our policy priorities as we have those conversations with elected officials, mostly at the federal level, but also at the state level. And then also with our DE&I efforts as well. It's really important to know kind of what the demographics are, what they're bringing to the table, and what they're providing and the impacts they are in our community. So we were really happy to get the information that's going to be provided here today by the American Immigration Council. And I want to thank them and their team. They've been a great partner on this and working with the press releases and the publication pieces, and then also the research and the data, and working with us every step of the way to make sure it was exactly what we were hoping to get. So I want to thank them for doing yet another nice job for us and giving us some good data that we look forward to informing you of and releasing here today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Asma with the American Immigration Council, and she's going to provide some additional insight and update as to some of the great data that they found in their research and analysis. And then we'll come back and we'll kind of have a discussion in which we're all involved. So Asma, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Drew, for the introduction. And it's so nice to be with all of you this morning. I'll just start off with introducing myself. My name is Asma Isa. I'm the manager of state and local initiatives at the American Immigration Council. And I will pass it over to my colleague, Nan, to introduce herself as well.
Hi, good morning. Nice to meet you all. My name is Nan Wu. I'm the Deputy Director of Research at the American Immigration Council. I'll hand it over to Asma for the presentation.
Great, thank you, Nan. So we'll just go ahead and dive in. I am going to screen share a PowerPoint that we have prepared for this presentation. So if you can just bear with me for a second. All right, can everyone see the PowerPoint slide that I have up? Okay, perfect. So starting with an introduction to Ourself, I just wanted to give a little bit of background on our work that we do at NAE, which is now American Immigration Council. So we are, again, my name is Asma Isa. I'm the manager of state and local initiatives, and I'm here to present on 2 reports, New Americans in Omaha-Council Bluffs and New Americans in Southwest Iowa. So these reports were produced in collaboration with the Council Bluffs Chamber. Before we were a New American Economy, and as of January 2022, so just this month, we have become a new merged organization with the American Immigration Council. So I will move on to slide 2. Just to give a little bit of background and information about our work previously. So New American Economy was a bipartisan research and advocacy organization fighting to change the narrative about immigrants in America. So we was started 10 years ago by a bipartisan group of civic, municipal, and business political leaders who believe that immigration is fundamentally an economic issue and wanted to be talking about it in a different way. So in our work, we use original research to quantify exactly how immigrants are an economic asset at every level of our economy and in every community. And then we use that narrative to bring together leadership across industries, across the political aisle, and across cities and states to advocate and implement policies that can really support our entire workforce and our economy. So the New American Immigration Council was created this January in 2022. This is a merge of the previously New American Economy with the American Immigration Council. So this new organization will provide a full suite of programs that no other single organization offers. We will work to ensure that immigrants have a robust set of rights that they can exercise to secure their place in American society. We provide real and meaningful access to counsel and exercise those rights. We create paths for immigrants to succeed economically, socially, and culturally, and politically in whatever community they settle in. And we also help host communities to take proactive roles in welcoming and supporting immigrants through policy assistance, strategic planning, targeted communication that speaks to those challenges. And so now I'll just speak a little bit about our state and local initiatives. So the state and local team has been around for about 6 to 7 years after comprehensive immigration reform fell apart a bit at the federal level. And so we saw a real desire from local leaders to be more proactive in approaching immigration issues within their own communities. On the state and local team, our work centers around 3 main pillars: local level, state level, and the business community. So the council is actively working in over 100 communities. We work with mayor's offices, chambers of commerce, civic organizations, as well as in more than 20 states with state legislators, business leaders, and policy staff to help develop policies that are more inclusive and show with data the economic benefit of immigrant integration to each community and state. So we bring together cross-sector stakeholders to use local research, and we also help support stakeholders in drafting local immigrant integration plans. So one more note that I wanted to comment on before we dive into the research is our Global Talent Chamber Network. So this is a network that brings together chambers of commerce from across the country, who the Council Bluffs Chamber of Commerce is a member of. These are chambers who see immigrant integration as an economic growth strategy. And so through this network, we offer research, technical assistance, and strategic advice to chambers on issues of immigrant integration, immigration reform, and economic development. Members of the network have access to our support through tailored economic research and reports, communications and messaging guidance, policy analysis, and then also plug and play advocacy opportunities. So we work on a number of issues related to immigrant integration, but for this presentation, we're just going to be focusing on the economic impacts of immigrants in the Omaha-Council Bluffs metro area, as well as Southwest Iowa region. So to begin, I'll just note that for both of our reports, we looked at the data from the years of 2014 to 2019. So the figures in the first half of the presentation refer to Omaha-Council Bluffs metro area, and then the figures in the second half of the presentation will refer to Southwest Iowa region. In our reports, we do have these geoscopes defined at the bottom in a footnote if anyone is interested in what exactly is included in this geoscope. From the figures, you can see here that 8% of the population in Omaha-Council Bluffs were immigrants, which is below the national average of 13.6 of the population, but slightly higher than the average immigrant population of 5.6 across the state of Iowa. So in Iowa, the Omaha-Council Bluffs area is quite diverse. When looking at population and population growth in Omaha-Council Bluffs, we found that between 2014 and 2019, the overall population in Omaha-Council Bluffs metro area increased by 11.1%, and the immigrant population increased by 25.4%. So this accounts the growth in the immigrant refugee population accounted for more than 16% of the overall population growth in the area. When looking at top 5 countries of origin for immigrants in the Omaha-Council Bluffs metro area, we found that the top countries included Mexico, India, Guatemala, Myanmar, and El Salvador. Over 1/3 of the foreign-born population is from Mexico and Central America. This tells us that Omaha-Council Bluffs is diverse, not just in what portion of the population is foreign-born, but also where their foreign-born population comes from. So now we're going to dive into a few data points about the economic impact of immigrants in the metro area. Given their income, immigrants contributed significantly to state and local taxes, so including property and sales and excise taxes levied by state and local governments. This immigrant population leaves a significant economic footprint, a tax base that supports the metro area's infrastructure, a workforce that attracts business and drives growth, and a solid foundation of consumer spending that can go back into the local economy. So we found that in 2019, 1.9 billion was created in immigrant household income in the Omaha-Council Bluffs metro area. And of this income, over 182 million went to state and local taxes, and over 301 million went to federal taxes. This left immigrants with over 1.4 billion in spending power, which is just about 6.4% of all the spending power in the metro area. So looking at how immigrant workers contributed to Omaha-Council Bluffs GDP, we found that immigrants contributed 5.1 billion to the metro area's GDP. And with this income, immigrants are also supporting federal social programs, which is critical to note within the context of the fact that nationally our population is aging out of the workforce and will be increasingly relying on these programs. So in the Omaha-Council Bluffs metro area, more than 211 million went to Social Security and more than 55 million went to Medicare. So now we're going to take a look at some labor force findings. Before I get into the numbers, I just wanted to know that we define working age as 16 to 64 years of age. So although the foreign-born population in the Omaha Council Bluffs metro area made up 8% of the area's overall population, they represented 10.6% of its working age population, 9.4% of its employed labor force, and 11.9% of STEM workers in 2019, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's important to pay attention that immigrants make up 8% of the total population, but nearly 12% of the STEM workers in the region, because specifically in Iowa, we found in 2015 that across Iowa, there were 63.6 open STEM job postings published online for every unemployed STEM worker. So we see here that immigrants are filling vital roles across the state of Iowa, not just in Omaha-Council Bluffs. When businesses and employers can't fill these positions, open positions, it can mean more than just stunted economic growth. It often can mean businesses can become slower to adapt to trends, restricting their ability to innovate and remain nimble in their rapidly changing market. When looking at the research, we also found that immigrants played a key role in key industries in Omaha-Council Bluffs. Keep in mind that only 8% of the metro area is foreign-born. So despite that, immigrants are filling key roles that included manufacturing, construction, hospitality, professional services, and transportation and warehousing. Because of the role immigrants play in the workforce, helping companies keep jobs on US soil, we also estimated that immigrants living in the metro area had helped create or preserve 3,400 local manufacturing jobs that would have otherwise vanished or moved elsewhere by 2019. As such, immigrants play a crucial role in filling gaps in the workforce at both ends of the skill spectrum, from doctors and engineers to service workers and more labor-intensive jobs. So shifting gears a little bit, when looking at entrepreneurship, nationally, we find that immigrants are more likely to be self-employed and to have their own businesses than the rest of the population. And this creates jobs for their surrounding communities. Entrepreneurship is another area we see immigrants driving growth, both in job creation and in local economic activity. So across the country, we see that immigrants are more likely to be entrepreneurs, employing over 8 million Americans and generating 1.3 trillion in sales. Despite making up 8% of the population in Omaha-Council Bluffs, immigrants made up 9.1% of the business owners, and about 3,500 foreign-born business owners generated over 79 million in business income for the area. So now looking at naturalization data for Omaha-Council Bluffs, we see the impact foreign-born residents play at the voting booth. Furthermore, when immigrants are naturalized and when they are able to naturalize, it increases their earning potential and makes it easier for them to be business owners. So in Omaha-Council Bluffs, we found that 33.3% have naturalized and 9.4% are eligible for naturalization. And if people that are eligible to naturalize don't naturalize, it does limit their earning potential and their ability to become business owners, which we saw earlier is a vital and vibrant component of this area's economy. So taking a look at housing at another important area of immigrant economic impact is looking at their housing wealth. So when you own a home, not only are you supporting property taxes and stabilizing the housing market, but you are also committing to staying in the community and investing in the community. In 2019, 45.6% of immigrant households owned their home with a total property value of $2.5 billion. And immigrants also made up 54.4% of households that were renting housing, and they paid over $132 million in annual rent. So switching gears here a little bit, I'll just share a few data points that we found in our report covering the Southwest Iowa region. For this region, this includes the counties of Cass, Fremont, Harrison, Mills, Montgomery, Page, Potawatomi, and Shelby. And these are from 5-year samples of 2014 to 2019. So from the figures, we can see that 2.9% of the population in Southwest Iowa were immigrants, which is below both the national average and also the population across the state of Iowa. When looking at the population growth in Iowa, we found an interesting detail that between 2014 and 2019, the overall population in this region actually decreased by 1.1%. And the immigrant population in the Southwest Iowa grew by 7.4%. So this means that without growth in the immigrant population, the decline in the region's population would have even been greater, falling by 1.3%. So given their income, we also looked at the immigrants' economic impact in Southwest Iowa region. And here we found that in 2019, immigrant household total income was $108 million in Southwest Iowa. And of this income, over 11 million went to state and local taxes, over 15 million went to federal taxes, which left them with 81.6 million in spending power, which is 2.2% of all spending power in the region. When we looked at contributions to federal social programs, we also found that immigrants in Southwest Iowa contributed 3.5 million to Medicare and 14.6 million to Social Security. And then looking at the labor force in Southwest Iowa, although the foreign-born population made up 2.9% of the region's overall population, we did find that they represented 4% of the working age population, 3.9% of the employed labor force, and 12.4% of its manufacturing workers. So that is quite a significant role that immigrants play in the manufacturing industry in the Southwest Iowa region. Looking at naturalization data for the Southwest Iowa, we found that 37.9% of immigrants have naturalized and 10% of immigrants are eligible for naturalization. And then when looking at housing wealth in Southwest Iowa, we found that 54.2% of immigrant households owned their own home with a total property value of 100.6 million. Immigrants also made up 45.8% of households that were renters, and they paid over 4 million in annual rent. So I will end our data on Iowa and Council Bluffs on that note. I just want to note that these are just highlights and key findings of both reports, but please feel free to check out both reports in the link that is included in the chat, and feel free to send us any questions that you may have. I did want to also share a few other resources and resources that are accessible to you all if you're interested, and then we can move on to questions. So one thing I did want to highlight is that we do have state compacts on immigration and business coalitions. So listed on this slide are state compacts that we have in 7 different states across the US that have a state compact with guiding principles on immigration and immigration policies. These are compacts that, the business community finds policies in congruence with what is important for their business community, their local workforce, and things that they want to work on to continue to improve their workforce, their economic impact, and also be able to support immigrant integration in their communities. And as you can see, that we do have an Iowa Compact on immigration. Another resource I wanted to share with you all is Maptheimpact.org. So this is an overall data interactive that you can view state, metro, county, and congressional district data. about immigrant and refugee economic and demographic contributions to these areas. So please feel free to check out this website if you want to play around. Also you can look at other states and other congressional districts if you want to compare yours to other places in the US and see how they do comparatively. But that is in data interactive that we are continuously updating, and it has just been updated as of a few months ago in 2021. So with that, I will leave it to our Q&A. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share about the findings of this report. And we thank the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce for partnering with us on these two reports on Southwest Iowa and Council Bluffs, Omaha-Council Bluffs metro area. And we look forward to any questions anyone might have. Please feel free to ask me or Nan on the video, or if you feel more comfortable including them in the chat, we're happy to address anything that people might have questions on.
I did want to just make sure everyone was aware again that I did put in the chat, just for your reference, what constitutes Southwest Iowa, because I know that was a question that I had received in the chat. Plus, that was one of the key questions we had. I know Asma kind of referred to it, but I just wanted you to have it in writing there so you knew.
Thank you. And also, I just want to add, our me and Nan's email addresses are listed on this slide. If you guys do find that you, after reviewing the reports, and if you have more detailed questions about whether it's about the work that we do at American Immigration Council or also the research reports themselves, and if they're more detailed questions, please feel free to email both myself and Nan, and we can address any questions that you guys might have in the future.
And this information is now all live. We sent out the press release before the meeting, and then it has a link directly to these reports in the dashboard and just kind of the announcement on the American Immigration Council, New American Economy website. So do make sure you do access it there. So if you do want copies or anything of that, it's readily available there, and we'll obviously share it too with our social media and other outlets on the chamber as well. If you talk to people who did not sit in on this, we did record this, so the recording will be available if they so choose as well. And again, we can open it up to questions or comments from anyone.
Hi, this is Queenie. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm just wondering, so I know this is live. Is it downloadable? Is the presentation downloadable?
Presentation is not, but I'll let Asma speak to that.
Yes, so I can share the PowerPoint slides with Drew after this presentation, and he is free to share with whomever is interested in the PowerPoint slides. We're more than happy to do that. And then the reports themselves are downloadable on the URL that Drew shared, as well as it's linked in the chat. So if you go to that URL, there will be two different, it'll identify the Southwest Iowa report and then also the Omaha-Council Bluffs report, and you'll be able to download the report itself in PDF form.
This is Quinicia from KETV. My question would be for the Council Bluffs Chamber of Commerce. What would you like to see businesses in the area take from this information?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just not only the positive impacts that immigrants are having in our community. We see it in a lot of different ways, but this really looks at it from a workforce and economic perspective. And that's something we really wanted to make clear with this, is not only can it help our businesses see the positive impacts and use that as they go out and try to attract additional immigrant workforce, but also it can help policymakers, our workforce development apparatuses, individuals with their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. This information is all applicable in a variety of different ways, and we wanted to make it readily available to our members in our community because we think it's really important that it is available in such a fashion and that information is put out there, because it is so important as we look to address those key issues.
And I mean, are you able to talk about some of the challenges that immigrants who are looking for work in Southwest Iowa or in the Omaha Metro might see? I ask this because I mean, I'm a child of immigrants. I know my parents had some struggles when they were looking for jobs where I'm from. So I just wonder what you're hearing from immigrants in the area.
Well, one of the biggest things is identifying individuals from that culture, or from that ethnicity, or whatever it may be, to really get those immigrants involved with that culture. There's a lot of great resources here in Council Bluffs and in Omaha to really get them immersed in the community and help them transition to that community, identify some folks who may be from whatever country or region that they are as well. And one of the things we're doing at the chamber as well is we're trying to do what we can. We're usually a conduit insofar as getting them to those resources, but also we obviously want to connect them to employers. Employers have great resources, whether it's interpreters, translators, a litany of different things to make sure that that any individual who may have a language barrier or cultural barrier that can be overcome within their workforce. So that's something we work really hard on. And one example for right now is the Afghan refugees. We're starting to see some of those come into the Council Bluffs area, and we're really kind of trying to run point on working with Lutheran Family Services and a litany of other folks on this call who can provide critical resources to those individuals to really transition them as seamlessly as possible to the community, because we know how hard it is to transition and kind of uproot your life in a lot of ways. And we're here to try to make it as easy as we can because we have the resources and the connections to be able to help in that regard.
Thank you.
See that there's a question in the chat about are there any programs in the region to generate naturalization to help immigrants improve their income?
I do not know that off the top of my head. That's where it would come in and getting them connected to an individual who may know that, whether it is Centro Latino or whether it is Lutheran Family Services, Heartland Family Services, whoever it may be, that would be someone we would connect them to really work through that. And as I spoke to earlier, that's a critical role we can play.
And this is a question for anyone on the call. How are we concerned about the pandemic having an impact in any of these numbers? I mean, do we think that the pandemic is going to drive the numbers lower, higher?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Nan, would you want to speak to that data?
So we definitely, throughout the pandemic, we have been focusing on kind of studying the impact of the pandemic on the labor market in terms of different jobs being adversely affected by the pandemic and also the economic recession. And through our research, we definitely see some changes in terms of different industries or occupations being kind of disproportionately affected in a really negative way by the pandemic, like a lot of industries or sectors in the hospitality industry, like including and also restaurants and general services. We're definitely seeing jobs losses in those industrial sectors, and also the workers in those jobs being more affected. So we are definitely seeing kind of an impact of the pandemic and the stats we have in the report about different industries, and also in terms of people's employment. We are seeing an uptick in unemployment rates for some of the more vulnerable communities. But as kind of months goes on, and we are seeing more signs of recovery in the labor market, we are also seeing changes in the data points in relation to labor market stats too. So, but with that said, I think everything is sort of still in flux now, and we are waiting for more updated information, for example, from the from the Census Bureau, where we get the data from about the American Community Survey from. So we'll be able to provide an update about the sort of the labor market impact of the pandemic, and see how we can provide more insights in terms of the challenges faced by immigrant workers during the pandemic, and also immigrant families who struggle with things from like securing food to childcare, and see how we can kind of like put that into the spotlight and connect and try to kind of use that information and see how we can make that information more useful to local community in terms of providing help.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments from any of the attendees? Well, as I said, do watch for this announcement to be made, not only via our press release for the folks in the press pool, but also just on our social media, on our newsletters, all those different things with the recording and with the reports and with the presentation. We'll make those all readily available to folks so they can have them. If you do have any questions, do feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have that conversation. If I cannot provide you the answer, I will certainly reach out to Asma or Nan, and they will be able to help with that. But do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or you're having difficulty accessing the information, whatever it may be. We're here to help in that regard. And as I mentioned before, we will make those slides available and all this information available to anyone who may have missed it. So with that, thank you very much for joining us and have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Great info. Thank you so much.